Hey everyone, welcome back to Wicked Sports for February 28th, 2025. Last day of February. Hope you all had a great month and you're ready to head into March where, it's still winter, but we might get some spring weather this month, which is incredibly exciting because we will be covering, spring training and all of that. And I just feel like it feels better when the temperatures are getting a little warmer, start talking about baseball, start really paying attention to basketball. The winter will hopefully come to a close soon. But as for what we got on our show today, we got a couple of at the buzzer segments that I'm going to talk a little bit about. Travis Kelce possibly returning to the Chiefs. I confirmed, but still watch the segment. But without further ado, let's go to my segment with Jack about the Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Everyone, welcome back to At the Buzzer. I'm joined by Jack Tunin. Jack, how you doing?
Doing good, Brian. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and I'm good as always. So, not talking about the Celtics tonight. Today, we will be talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. You had some hot takes you wanted to talk about in their game against Minnesota. Tell me what you're thinking.
I don't know, man. I don't know if they're hot takes after last night at the time of recording. So it was on Monday night. OKC Thunder played the Minnesota Timberwolves. They were up by I think it was like 20 something, with like 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And they lost the game and they didn't pull their starters. They had their starters out there. Minnesota actually had pulled their starters and had mostly a second, third unit out there, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Naz Reid, like that kind of group. And they pulled it out, and they won in overtime. And Shea, I guess, wasn't getting his whistle anymore. So yeah, that's a hot take, I guess. But I guess the question is, can the OKC Thunder perform when it matters in the playoffs? And if they run into Minnesota?
Yeah, so Minnesota, obviously, Western Conference Finals last year, right?
Yeah.
Pretty good team. They had a lot of shakeup this offseason,
For
like,
sure.
don't get me wrong. But I guess how much of like a dent did this put in the reputation of the Thunder for you?
For me, I think it was pretty big given the circumstances. I mean, I hate to say it, but we've seen the Celtics as a Celtics homer, right? Like we've seen the Celtics go and do similar things, lose by 20 something or be up by 20 something and then lose in the fourth, and they won a championship. I think you look at the OKC Thunder, and while not exactly the same blueprint as the Celtics, like the concept is very similar just a few years back, right? You've got one guy who you've developed into an MVP caliber player and a really, really, really good supporting cast that you've developed either through the draft or through free agency signings. And now you kind of have to get them over the hump, which is obviously into the playoffs and be able to perform in the playoffs. So I think they had an early exit last year. Again, they're a young group, so not surprising necessarily. But now it's sort of, okay, if Shea is supposed to be this MVP, like he's going to win MVP or he's going to be second place for MVP, like, is he going to be able to do it when it matters most? And if there's not a whistle in his favor, I think I saw a stat comparison the other night that was Shea took 17 free throws and Nikola Jokic took 0, and Nikola put up more points. So, like, if we're looking at that, how do you realistically say, like, yeah, this is a championship team? That brand of basketball is tough to watch.
I mean, listen, we've complained ad nauseum about that brand of basketball,
We have.
specifically with Joel Embiid and, how he plays to the whistle or for the whistle, I guess would be a better way to put it. So, yeah, probably the worst type of basketball to watch as a viewer. People want to like complain about the 3-point, explosion ruining basketball. I think the like foul baiting more than anything has made like certain games just completely unwatchable.
Completely. I think you can look at this not Minnesota, sorry. I think Minnesota's the opposite of that, actually. I think that's a bully ball team, whereas you have the OKC Thunder, who really aren't they're a good team offensively and defensively, but you add in the bad brand that is driving to the hoop and then just like falling over basically and like getting like marginal contact that I guess you could say technically is a foul, right? But it's not fun to watch. It's a slow game. It's the pace of play is broken up significantly just by like watching Shea go to the line for his 17th free throw attempt. And then like you have to sit there and pretend to be excited about it. And to me, that's not exciting. If the final score is all that matters, then like what are we playing for? I guess, right? Shouldn't everybody be foul baiting?
Yeah, I'll put it this way, Jack, and maybe you can let me know if this, comparison rings true to you. It's as if the Philadelphia Eagles ran the tush push for 4 yards every single play.
Yeah, yeah. Or
That'd be
like
horrible.
once in a
Yeah,
while they'll throw a slant, right?
right.
And then they go back to the tush push, and you're like, okay, well, like this is like we can't technically stop it. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah,
It's a
can't stop it. Not illegal. Not against the rules. Frustrating to watch.
you'd like to think that the NBA is taking effort towards flop and like foul baiting like that, but I think the flop is like it's progress, right? We have the flop fine, which we saw Josh Hart get the other night actually against the Celtics. He was fined 2K for it. The issue with that is that is the fourth fine this year, only the fourth fine, and I think I could count the number of flops that I've seen, even by some of our Celtics, frankly, that have been done since it was introduced earlier this year. So just for reference, I looked this up earlier because I needed to talk about it because I'm angry, man. I hate this style of basketball. Joel Embiid, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, take notice, right? Like this is I can't stand this. The amount of times the NBA has given out the flopping fine is 4 total so far. 3 of which came within the first month of the season, and then the fourth was Josh Hart the other night, and that's it. And it's $2,000 per flop. So I mean, to these guys, no offense, that's kind of minimal.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. Do you think like the beginning of the season when they were doing it more was just okay, don't do it because we will call it or we will
Precedent.
find you? Do you think it helped at all, or do you think it's like because they only did it 3 times before, this month it just was whatever?
I think that was their intent, right? Was to do it, be like, hey, like we're watching you, like don't do stupid things. But then you also I like how they did it with Hart, where it was egregious in the moment, and then it was like a fine after the fact. But I need to look into this more. I don't think they can call it like in game, right? Like they can call a flop in game and be like, that's foul baiting. Sorry, like you get a free throw. It's a technical free throw, I think.
Mhm.
But it still is I don't know, man. It's not fun to watch at the end of the day, I think is what I can say. But I think, yeah, like you said, they did it to say, like, to prove a point, like, hey, we're serious about this. But then they proved they weren't serious about it. So it went back
Right.
to normal,
So
probably a month. Right.
now what?
Yeah. Now what? It's like, is this like okay, it worked. We got 3 dudes on it and also Josh Hart. And like, we're going to double down next year. Or like, I don't know. You even look at Team USA basketball, not to go on a tangent, but you see dudes in the first practice, like go and like draw marginal contact and then try to put a shot up and fall down because they're like, oh, well, in the NBA, that's how it's called. It's not how it's called in EuroLeague. It's not how it's called in other leagues around the world. So you look at that and you're like, well, that's a different brand of basketball. And if that's what the NBA wants to hang its hat on, that's pretty gross.
Yeah. I thought, very interesting conversation out of just, an Oklahoma City,
Yeah.
uh, topic. But anything else you wanted to add before we get on out of here?
I think we got to talk real quick about Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's missed 3 at the end of the game also. So that's more what damaged the reputation for me almost than losing by or dropping a 20-point lead in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes to go. So just a really bad shot, couldn't get open. I tried to get fouled on it, surprise, and did not get fouled on it. So just bad look overall.
Not what you want at the end of the game, needless to say.
For sure.
All right. Well, Jack, where can they find you online?
Best place to find me is on Twitter, and that's at Jack_Tiernan. Follow me there for now the MLB's back. Follow me there for MLB takes. Follow me there for NBA takes as we wind the season down a little bit. You could also watch me on some of our other shows here at Weekly Good Sports. You've got me on the Bayou Breakdown, joining in some of the baseball shows as well, and then obviously here at the Buzzer.
Yeah, Around the Diamond. By the time this airs, the last 3 Around the Diamonds will have aired, and Jack, you were part of all 3 of them. So
love it.
Yeah, as big a part of it as anyone else at this point. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you all in the next segment. All right, now moving on to my segment with Ryan, where we talk a little bit more basketball. So check that out. All right, so our next At the Buzzer segment, I'm joined by Ryan. Ryan, how you doing?
Brian, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming on. So, Celtics laid a beatdown on the Knicks coming out of the All-Star break. Just tell me about that game, how they've been playing since then, how you expect them to play down the stretch. all of that. Floor is yours.
I mean, they've just really turned it on. I think this has been going on for a while. Was it like maybe even a month ago? Remember when they beat the Cavs? It's been going on for a while. It isn't always great. To me, I do kind of think about like in theory, you want a team that is just going 100% at all times. However, as there's been a lot of discussion, the NBA season's very long and can't always be expected. And the Celtics, right, even before they won the championship, we were always a team we knew could at times fall asleep, right, a little bit. So they've just really clearly been turning it on, and it doesn't really look like anyone who has been considered like a serious threat to them can touch them. Especially being like the Knicks and the Pacers. The Knicks and the Cavaliers. I mean, I guess there's always the Bucks. I don't think they've looked particularly great. I think Giannis and Dame have both been battling some injuries. You can't count them out because of those two, but I'm also not incredibly worried about either of them. It's very hard to see a serious threat for the Celtics right now, but right, we still have a long way to go. These teams might, they might recuperate from these losses. The Cavs did add DeAndre Hunter. I believe he's putting up points for them. And, the Knicks are going to nurse their losses and get back to it. I have always thought with them that the addition of Karl Anthony Towns, right, he's been incredible this season, but my feeling has always just been, I'd have to look it up. He's like probably 27. At this point, I think in a lot of ways, he is who he is. Well, there's a person and a player, and he's very, very efficient shooter, very great inside scorer as well. But honestly, just a liability defensively, and he's you see like a team like the Celtics are just going to eat him alive. And when things aren't going his way and he is and he does get frustrated, it usually doesn't look very pretty, and it's not always great for team morale. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out for them. I also think, I love Mikal Bridges. I'd have to look. He hasn't quite been, I think, what exactly you would have hoped for, given, Cat coming in. That kind of takes away from, his time and usage. Additionally, OG Anunoby, good player. I think sometimes gets a little overrated being this ultimate like 3-and-D guy. I think, all of these guys really need to step up around Brunson. And even if they do, I've never been convinced that they don't fall short. Jalen Brunson's an incredible player. I just personally have always had a hard time seeing a team consistently win, become a contender with him as the best player. He's obviously an incredible player. I think he can do it, but I'm hesitant to say like, yes, 100% you want to go all in on him as your best player. And he's like a top 10 player in the league, probably. So it's very tough.
That kind of brings us to our next point. So there's, the old, like, you got to win 40 before you lose 20. Right now, only the Cavs, Celtics, and the Thunder possibly have that. Who knows how like true that is, or it's just like a thing people say. But I guess this is kind of the point of the season where true contenders and pretenders kind of show themselves. I guess who are you feeling is like a legitimate contender at this point? And then if you want to give me a hot take on a pretender or two.
I think it's really difficult to say with a lot of these teams that people consider contenders because if, for instance, like OKC, I think they lost in the playoffs last year. Let me see. I don't know if it was the first. I just want to check if it's the first or second round. I believe it was the second.
All right. Looking it up, seeing where OKC finished in the playoffs last year.
Yes.
Second round.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Just want to double check that it wasn't round. Okay, so second round, realistically, just based on kind of like this is a rule of thumb that I try to go by. Yeah, they made it to the second round. That makes them, I would say, they are contenders, right? They have at least a top 5 player in SGA. They've got Jalen, Chet Holmgren. They've been playing very well overall. I think last night, I don't think you can read into too much. Again, one of their 3 big pieces was out. He's a pretty key player against a team like Minnesota, and it's a back-to-back coming off the All-Star break. So, it definitely shows what can happen. But personally, even when I'm not really sure how I feel about the Timberwolves overall, right? But we know from last year, the fact they have Anthony Edwards, that is a team that can compete. They were in the Western Conference Finals last year. If they're able to sneak in there, I don't see a reason they can't, beat a pretty good team. They've consistently been competing. As far as the East Coast, I struggle to say that the Cavaliers are contenders only because I don't think this group has ever gone past the first round together. I think they are still pretty ripe to get upset.
I like that. That is a hot take because they're 47-10 right now,
Yeah, and that's a regular season, right?
Yeah.
And we'll see. That's a tricky one because they are really good. I would say they may be pretenders. They're the Knicks. That's another one we have to wait and see because, again, last year they almost made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm going to say for right now, they're looking more like pretenders because it was looking like they improved. I think it's going to be tricky. I would say a sleeper contender, which maybe I'm a little partial or whatever. I maybe the Pacers.
Okay. Yeah.
I just think right now, their record's been getting better. I've always liked Tyrese Halliburton's style of play. He was horrible. He was pretty bad this year. And he's been getting better, but he's been getting steadily better. And the whole thing with him is just, the assist he's able to generate, and he's just a really good point guard, which is very valuable. And then in addition, they almost beat us last year in the ECF. They didn't almost beat us, but that was probably the most brutal sweep ever. Right? There was never it was. I remember when it was done, you're just like, oh, thank God. It was a very stressful 4 games. You were
right.
Of what's going on, and that was all Andrew, and Tyrese Halliburton was out, right?
Yeah.
And while it's incredible, I think it also speaks to kind of when you have a really good playmaker like that, sometimes when the team's out, it can still function really well without him, right? Because under his helm, these guys know what to do. And you have a really good second, like Andrew Nemhard, most of the time he's probably, I'd have to look at their stats. He's probably 3rd or 4th on the list in a lot of ways, but he's clearly shown you can step up and you can run the offense through him when needed. And that's an incredible asset. I think he's only in his 3rd year. And they have some guys that work well with them. They have Siakam, Miles Turner. With Siakam there, he doesn't have to do as much, and he can kind of just do his rim protection, stretch the floor. I'm not convinced on the Pacers. It's more just they are a team right now. I would be more worried about randomly upsetting us than the other two. That could definitely change, right? And again, they haven't been consistent this year, so we'll have to wait and see.
All right, last question for this segment. Detroit Pistons, 32-26, winners of 7 straight. They've really turned it around this season. How do you feel about them? Are they contenders, pretenders, just a fun team? What do you think?
I don't think they're contenders, but maybe in the sense of can they make the playoffs and get started on their run like the Magic did last year? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because I think we had talked about that draft that Kate Cunningham was in. I think maybe a somewhat unpopular opinion. Most people, like, if they redraft that, they say you got to take Evan Mobley. I probably disagree. I think specifically for the Pistons, they made the right pick in Cade Cunningham. He was out, but it's just to have like a big point guard that can run your offense through like that is super invaluable. And they've done a really good job of surrounding him with, kind of all of these different veteran players that no one else really wanted, that are pretty useful in their roles, right? Like they got Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., Mikael Beasley, who like a lot of people get very sick of, his shooting volume. But these guys have all been pretty invaluable this season on that team, and it kind of speaks how ready Cade was. And then, right, they have a bunch of exciting young guys like Jalen Duran is just like, he's got his flaws, but he's a fucking tank. Then they have Asar Thompson, very fun. I think it's pretty crazy. It could go off the hinges anytime, maybe. But I think if you even look, like most people 2 years ago, it was like, is it the Pistons' time or the Magic's time? I was kind of a Magic guy. I felt more like the Magic, but I think you could have made a case for either. And so, yeah, they've made the moves, and Cade seems to finally progressing on the track he should be. And I was looking at that yesterday. I think it would be very cool if they make the top 6. I would love it. It's just, that's pretty fun,
Oh yeah, I think I saw the stat over the last 3 seasons. They won 31 games, and they've won like 32 this year. That's fun. Like, if I'm a Pistons fan, I'm so excited right now.
That's why they fired and are still paying Ty Lue last year, right? Because he was just kind of like, hey, this team is going to suck, and we're going to continue to suck, and we're going to tank the draft picks. And obviously management, right, felt very different. They're like, no, we think we're on. We think we're
some guys. Yeah.
And sure enough, they kind of went opposite way. Instead of running all these young guys, it getting really ugly. And it's working pretty well for them so far, I'd say. The other team we could talk about in the East that I forgot was the Magic. I honestly did kind of think they would end up being a contender. We'll say for now, I don't even know that they would be pretenders, just because not to any fault of their own, just because Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero have both been injured a lot, right? I think you're also going to run into this when your 2 best players are like these 6'10", 6'11" guys running with these guard skills. That can definitely happen. But yeah, I think they're still right. Did they make it to the second round last year as well? I'm pretty sure they did. I believe they beat the Cavs in the first round. But regardless, right? So that's a very good sign for them. I think they would have been there's still a lot of kinks they got to work out, but I think they would have been a good spot to, win a series again. But, we'll have to see if anything like that would happen. Not that anyone considered them in the contending, but I did think at least in the regular season, they were going to make more of a splash, and injuries have hurt them.
No, definitely. All right. Anything else you want to add before we get on out of here?
No, bro. I think that's about all I got.
All right. And where can we find you online?
You can find me on here mostly. Also check out the Wicked Good Sports blog. I'm going to eventually try to do maybe a top 25 players in the NBA list at some point. So maybe look out for that. Read Brian's stuff as well.
I think it's trying to put out a lot there. So if you're so inclined, please check that out. Also writing for dolphinstalk.com about my Dolphins. Did a blog about should they trade for Matthew Stafford. For all you Tua haters out there, I gave you a little something to think about. So thank you so much for your time, Ryan.
Oh, thank you, Brian.
We'll see you all in the next one. Okay, so the Chiefs, they lost the Super Bowl. They got blown out. Travis Kelce, he looked pretty done in the game. There were some highlights of him looking like he was potentially not playing as hard as he should have been, given the stage and given how hard Patrick Mahomes is playing. And people were wondering, like, is this it? Travis Kelce has begun to act. He's had his podcast, which is incredibly popular. He's dating the most famous musician probably in the world, and Taylor Swift. What does he need? Another year of football. And when we did a segment on this before, I kind of was like, well, he's a competitor. He doesn't want to have his last game be that Super Bowl loss. So I think that more than anything would be the reason that he comes back, to avenge the Super Bowl loss. And so it was announced on the Pat McAfee show. Travis Kelce texted him and he said, quote, "My dog, I'm coming back for sure. Going to try and get into the best shape I've been in this offseason and get back to the mountaintop. Got a real bad taste in my mouth with how it played out, or how I played in the last game, and how I got my guys ready for battle. I can't go out like that." And then he also shared, the "I'm not fucking leaving" speech from Wolf of Wall Street with his face superimposed over Leo's face. So Travis Kelce will be returning for another season in the NFL. And, I think that's exciting if you're a Chiefs fan, but I do have to wonder, how much does he have left in the tank, right? I mean, down year for him last year. Perhaps this can serve as a tradition, a transition to new tight ends where he's kind of being a player coach. There was a report that if he comes back, the Chiefs want him back in a reduced role. I think that, makes perfect sense, right? I mean, he's not the player he once was, but he did say he's going to try to get in the best shape of his life. So I guess we'll see how good of shape that he can be in. But, I don't expect too much from him, right? I don't expect him to light it up in any capacity. But I think, it will be good for the Chiefs to have a kind of like one last run for Travis, as if they needed more motivation. They've been to the Super Bowl 3 times in a row. But, it's interesting. He's a Hall of Fame level player. He's one of the greatest tight ends of all time, certainly the greatest Chiefs tight end of all time, beating out Tony Gonzalez, obviously, because he played his entire career in Kansas City. So it should be interesting to see what happens with Travis Kelce. Is he going to be effective? Is he going to be any better if he does get into better shape? Or is this kind of like going to be one of those things where it's like, do you remember when Antonio Gates ended his run? There were like a few years where he was on the Chargers and he'd like flip on a Chargers game. And at a certain point, he'd like catch a pass. And you're like, wait, Antonio Gates is still in the league? That's crazy. So I wonder if it will be more akin to that, where he's just used in spots and not the everyday player that he once was, certainly when it comes to catching passes. So if you're a Chiefs fan, how do you feel about Travis Kelce returning for a 13th season? Do you think he's washed? Do you think he still has something left in the tank? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. All right, the offseason's in full swing, and with it comes wild rumors. So this was initially a blog on wickedeverythingsports.com. Make sure you check it out for blogs pretty frequently during the week. I'm trying to get those out, pretty fast, but I figured it'd be good to read the blog here, kind of like cross promote everything. So this week we've been hit with 2 additions to the rumor mill, and they are intertwined. First, the Daily Mail is reporting that sources tell them that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are eyeing the Los Angeles Rams as their next stop after a failed tenure with the New York Jets. The second is that current Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford met with Tom Brady, minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. The meeting has been disputed as little more than happenstance, but given Brady's historic willingness to, let's say, skirt the rules, I'm personally not buying it. In order for Rodgers and Adams to end up in Los Angeles, Stafford has to first move on. So we'll begin there. Are the Raiders a quarterback away from truly contending in the AFC West? They have one of the best defensive ends in the league in Max Crosby, and perhaps the best tight end in Brock Bowers. Outside of those two, there are not many standout players. Christian Wilkins was a big free agent acquisition last season, but he'll be coming off of an injury. I'm not sure how much of the lack of talent matters in Brady's mind. He spent his career elevating the play of no-name receivers, and he probably is convinced that Stafford can do the same. All of this considered, I'm sure that Las Vegas would be willing to take a chance on the 37-year-old Stafford. So the Rams trade Stafford to the Raiders, and that allows them to sign Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. If they can both play up to a higher standard than they did last season for the Jets, this could be a solid move. Sean McVay can create an offense to maximize what Rodgers and Adams do well, plus Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua would benefit from their presence. The Rams were a solid team last year. It's doubtful that they want to rebuild entirely with a rookie quarterback. The other option they have is re-signing Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo played well in the regular season finale against the Seahawks, going for 334 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He's a known quantity and could probably provide serviceable quarterback play for the Rams, though that isn't as exciting as adding 2 aging superstars. Nor would it make up for letting a future Hall of Famer walk away after delivering a Super Bowl title in 2021 and a solid playoff run in 2024. As unlikely as this series of events is, I'm intrigued by it. Feels like a win for all sides, except for the Jets. I mean, I guess they could have Garoppolo. That has to be better than trying to convince Sam Darnold to return. Or if, he's too expensive, Zach Wilson. Let me know if Stafford to the Raiders and Rodgers plus Adams to the Rams makes any sense to you as a reader. Or I guess a watcher, since this is a video. Let me know your thoughts about all of this in the comments. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Wicked Good Sports Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great weekend. We will see you back here on Monday. Make sure you check out the main channel, Wicked Good Everything. Those Fake Nerds, another channel we do, which is Nerd and Pop Culture News. And then, of course, this is Wicked Good Sports. And for all of our podcasts that aren't sports, check out Better Radio. We will see you in the next one.